Sarah Martinez had been counting down to this night for weeks. 18 months stationed overseas in the Middle East were finally behind her. Now she was home in San Diego, dressed in regular clothes, trying to feel normal again. She picked a cozy Italian place on Fifth Avenue for dinner, somewhere quiet and far from the base where everyone recognized her by rank. She settled into a corner booth, loving how tucked away it felt. A cheerful college kid named Mike brought over some wine and jotted down her pasta order. For the first time in forever, Sarah smiled without forcing it. No uniform, no saluting, no watching her back constantly. Tonight, she was just another person grabbing dinner. The place had a decent crowd for a Thursday. Families chatted at various tables. Couples leaned close over candlelight. Business types talked shop near the entrance. Sarah watched them all with eyes trained from years in danger zones. But tonight she wanted that switch turned off. Then 5 guys walked through the door. Loud didn't even begin to describe them. They'd clearly been drinking before they showed up. The hostess sat them at a big table right in the middle, and suddenly their voices filled the whole restaurant. They looked young, maybe 20s to 30s, wearing clothes that screamed money. Everything about them shouted privilege. They snapped at Mike, cracked vulgar jokes loud enough for kids to hear, and didn't care who they bothered. Sarah tried tuning them out. She scrolled through texts from Navy buddies, some still deployed, others back home struggling like her. Their familiar faces made her feel connected. When her pasta came, she dug in eagerly. Real Italian cooking, not military rations. Every bite tasted like comfort, exactly what she needed while adjusting to regular life again. The rowdy group got progressively worse as they kept drinking. Their talk turned nasty, with crude remarks about women nearby and disgusting jokes that made families visibly squirm. Sarah saw a mom at the next table cover her little girl's ears, shooting them angry looks. When their meals showed up, they complained about everything, temperature, speed, anything. They sent multiple plates back, making scenes that disrupted everyone. Mike stayed professional, but Sarah noticed the strain on his face, dealing with their impossible demands. Sarah was halfway through her pasta when she felt their attention shift to her. They'd spotted her sitting alone and started talking about her without bothering to whisper. Their comments began as typical crude garbage, but quickly turned aggressive and threatening. She felt her shoulders tense up, that familiar alertness from deployment kicking in. But this was supposed to be her peaceful night, her return to normal. She breathed deeply and focused on her food, hoping they'd get bored and leave her alone. The manager, an older Italian man named Giuseppe, walked over and politely asked them to quiet down for everyone else's sake. They laughed in his face, cursed at him, and said paying customers could act however they pleased. Giuseppe apologized to several tables whose dinners had been ruined, offering free desserts and looking genuinely sorry. Sarah felt bad for him. This wasn't the kind of place used to handling jerks like this, and he seemed unsure how to deal with them without making things worse. Everything went downhill fast when one guy, tall and blonde with an expensive watch, got up heading toward the bath. Walking past Sarah's table, he deliberately bumped her chair and made a disgusting comment about how she looked. Sarah glanced up calmly and told him to keep moving. Her voice stayed steady but firm. That simple request set him off. He stopped and turned around, his face red from alcohol and anger. His 4 buddies sensed a fight and immediately stood, heading toward Sarah's corner. The whole restaurant's mood shifted as people sensed trouble brewing. "What did you just say?" the blonde guy demanded, leaning over her table. His breath reeked of whiskey, his eyes glazed and unfocused. Sarah stayed seated, hands resting calmly on the table, but every muscle was now ready. "I asked politely for you to move along," she replied evenly. "I'm trying to eat in peace." He laughed mockingly and waved his friends over. "Guys, get this. Princess here thinks she can boss us around." The other 4 surrounded her table, trapping her in the corner. Their body language screamed aggression, meant to intimidate. Giuseppe rushed between them and Sarah. "Gentlemen, please go back to your seats. I don't want problems here." His accent grew thick with stress, hands shaking. "Mind your business, old man," snarled another guy, heavy and bearded. "This is between us and the lady." He said lady with obvious mockery. Sarah quickly assessed everything. 5 drunk men, all bigger than her, blocking her way out. The closest tables had families with kids, who'd be at risk if this turned physical. The staff was just Giuseppe, Mike, and maybe a cook in back. Nobody who could handle 5 aggressive drunks. "Look," Sarah said, standing slowly and keeping her tone calm. "I don't want problem. Why don't you guys head back to your table and let me finish my meal?" She was giving them a chance to back down without looking weak, a de-escalation trick from military training. Instead, the blonde guy stepped even closer, invading her space. "Oh, now you're being maybe you should have thought about that before getting mouthy." His friends chuckled and closed in tighter. Other diners stopped eating and stared, growing alarmed, several had phones out, some calling for help, others recording, expecting violence. A family with two small kids quickly paid and left, the mother hurrying them past without looking at the men. Mike approached cautiously, clearly scared but trying to help. "Sir, please return to your table, or I'm calling the police." His voice cracked with nerve. "Call them, kid," the bearded guy laughed. "By the time they arrive, we'll be done teaching this stuck-up woman some manners." The threat was crystal clear. Sarah felt that familiar calm wash over her, the same feeling from countless dangerous moments overseas. Her heart rate actually slowed as training took over. She evaluated each man's position, spotted potential weapons, noted escape routes, calculated the best defensive angles in the tight space. The blonde guy reached toward her, either to grab her or shove her back down. This was the moment training had prepared her for, when talking stops and defending yourself becomes necessary. But she gave them one last chance. "I strongly suggest you step back," she said quietly, her voice carrying a new edge that made Giuseppe look at her surprise. "You really don't want this?" They burst out laughing at what seemed like an empty threat from a small woman trapped in a corner. They had no clue they were facing someone who'd survived multiple combat tours, trained by elite fighters, who'd faced armed terrorists in war zones. The blonde guy made the first move, reaching across the table to grab Sarah's wrist. In that instant, 15 months of training and combat reflexes exploded. Sarah caught his wrist and twisted it precisely, sending him to his knees. Before anyone could react, she'd neutralized the threat. The transformation was instant and shocking. The quiet woman peacefully eating pasta had become a controlled, efficient fighter. Her movements were precise, economical, devastatingly effective. The second attacker, the bearded one, lunged to help his friend. Sarah released the blonde guy's wrist and used his momentum against him, redirecting his charge into the corner table, where he crashed through plates and glass. Breaking dishes echoed through the suddenly silent restaurant. Giuseppe stumbled backward, eyes wide with shock. This wasn't what he'd expected when 5 large men threatened one small woman. Mike dropped his tray, plates crashing, staring at the unfolding scene. The third attacker came from her left, thinking he could overwhelm her while she dealt with his friend. Sarah pivoted smoothly, using Navy hand-to-hand combat technique. He found himself face down on the floor before understanding what happened, Sarah's knee pressing firmly between his shoulder blades. "Stay down," she commanded quietly, her voice carrying authority that froze everyone in the restaurant. This wasn't a suggestion, it was an order from someone used to being obeyed in dangerous situations. The fourth and fifth men hesitated for the first time, suddenly realizing they weren't dealing with an ordinary person. Sarah's stance, controlled breathing, and professional handling of their friends suggested military or law enforcement training. But alcohol and pride overrode their growing caution. They approached more carefully now, trying to coordinate. Sarah read their intentions immediately. She'd faced similar situations overseas, usually against armed opponents far more dangerous than drunk civilians. The fourth guy faked left while the fifth moved right, trying to flank her. Sarah stepped back against the wall, eliminating their angle and forcing them to approach directly. When they committed, she was ready. Her response was swift and decisive. Years of close-quarters combat training, enhanced by real experience in hostile places, came together in controlled violence lasting under 10 seconds. Both men ended up on the floor, dazed and confused about how they got there. The restaurant went completely silent, except for groans from the 5 men, sprawled around Sarah's table. Other diners sat frozen, forks halfway to mouths, staring in disbelief. Several were recording, capturing footage that would go viral within hours. Sarah stayed in defensive position for a moment, scanning for more threats, her training requiring her to secure the area before relaxing. When satisfied the danger had passed, she straightened her blouse and calmly returned to her seat. Giuseppe approached slowly, mouth hanging open. "Miss, how did you do that?" His English failed him in amazement, and he switched to rapid Italian, gesturing wildly. "Military training," Sarah replied simply, picking up her wineglass, which had somehow survived the brief but intense fight. Her hand was perfectly steady as she sipped, though her heart still raced from adrenaline. The blond guy struggled to his feet, holding his wrist and staring at Sarah with pain, confusion, and growing anger mixed together. "You're crazy! You broke my wrist." Sarah looked at him calmly. "It's sprained, not broken, and I warned you to step back. You ignored that warning." Her voice carried no emotion, just stating fact. Mike finally found his voice. "Should I call an ambulance?" He kept looking between Sarah and the five guys, trying to process what he'd witnessed. "Call the police," Sarah said firmly. "These men threatened and assaulted a customer. They need arresting." She pulled out her phone and started photographing each man, documenting their faces and the restaurant damage. The bearded guy slowly got up, blood trickling from a cut on his forehead where he'd hit the table corner. He looked at Sarah with newfound respect, mixed with lingering hostility. "What are you, some kind of cop?" Sarah took another sip of wine before answering. "United States Navy Special Operations. Just returned from deployment 3 weeks ago," she said it matter-of-factly, like mentioning a job at an office. The revelation sent shockwaves through the restaurant. Giuseppe's expression shifted from amazement to deep respect, and he immediately started apologizing to Sarah for the other customers' behavior. Several diners began applauding spontaneously, recognizing both her service and her restrained handling of the situation. Mike was already on the phone with emergency services, giving a breathless account. "Yes, there was a fight, but it's done now. The woman who defended herself is military, Navy, I think. The 5 guys who started it are all on the floor." The 5 men now fully grasped how badly they'd misjudged things. The blond guy cradled his injured wrist, his earlier swagger completely gone. The others checked their injuries and looked around nervously, suddenly remembering they were surrounded by witnesses with cameras. "Look, we didn't know," the third attacker said, still sitting where Sarah had put him. "If we'd known you were military, we never would've." Sarah cut him off with a look that could freeze fire. "My military service is irrelevant. You attacked an innocent person trying to enjoy a quiet dinner. Whether I was a soldier, teacher, or grandmother, your behavior was unacceptable." Giuseppe brought Sarah fresh wine, refusing payment. "Please, miss. Everything tonight is free. You've honored my restaurant." His voice was thick with emotion and gratitude. Other diners began approaching, wanting to thank her personally. An elderly Vietnam veteran shook her hand firmly. "Semper Fi, young lady, well done." Sarah gently corrected him about the branch, but accepted his gratitude graciously. A young mother dining with her teenage daughter stopped by. "Thank you," she said quietly. "Those men were making us very uncomfortable, and my daughter was scared. You made us feel safe." Sirens grew audible now, getting louder as police cars approached. Through the windows, Sarah saw flashing lights of multiple patrol vehicles pulling into the lot. She stayed calm, knowing her actions were completely justified and documented by security cameras and numerous witnesses. The 5 attackers grew increasingly agitated as reality sank in. They'd assaulted a decorated military veteran in front of dozens of witnesses, and it was recorded on multiple phones. Their earlier arrogance became growing panic. "We need to get our stories straight," the blond guy whispered urgently to his friends. "We say she attacked first." Giuseppe overheard and stepped forward angrily. "Don't you dare lie. I saw everything. You surrounded her. You threatened her. You touched her first." His Italian accent thickened as his anger grew. Mike nodded vigorously. "The security cameras got everything too. You guys were jerks all night. Then you cornered her. She asked you to leave her alone multiple times." 6 police officers entered, led by a sergeant who immediately assessed the situation. The scene was unusual. 5 large men sitting or lying on the floor looking injured and defeated, while one small woman sat calmly at her table sipping wine. Sarah stood as officers approached, her posture respectful but confident. She'd dealt with military police numerous times and knew exactly how to handle this. "Officers, I'm Petty Officer First Class Sarah Martinez, United States Navy. These 5 men assaulted me and I defended myself using appropriate force." The sergeant, a veteran himself who recognized military bearing, nodded respectfully. "Ma'am, we'll need statements from everyone involved. Can you walk me through what happened?" Sarah gave a clear, concise account of the evening's events, from the men's initial disruptive behavior to their escalating threats and eventual physical assault. Her report was professional and detailed, the kind of after-action report she'd filed countless times during service. Giuseppe, Mike, and several other witnesses completely backed up her story. The security footage would later confirm every detail, showing clearly that Sarah acted in self-defense against multiple attackers. The 5 men tried telling their version, but their stories were inconsistent and contradicted by physical evidence. The blonde guy claimed Sarah attacked unprovoked, but security footage clearly showed him reaching for her first. The bearded guy insisted they were only trying to talk, but multiple witnesses testified about their threatening behavior and crude language. Detective Lisa Rodriguez arrived 20 minutes later to take over. She was impressed by Sarah's calm professionalism and detailed statement. Petty Officer Martinez, your account is very thorough. How many deployments have you completed? 3 combat deployments, ma'am. Iraq twice, Afghanistan once. I just returned from my most recent assignment 3 weeks ago. Sarah's voice carried quiet pride of someone who'd served her country with distinction. Detective Rodriguez nodded with understanding. She'd investigated many veteran cases and recognized someone trained in military combat disciplines. Your restraint was remarkable. You could have seriously injured all 5 men, but you used only necessary force to stop the threat. Meanwhile, paramedics examined the 5 attackers. Their injuries were minor: bruises, a sprained wrist, a small forehead cut, and wounded pride. None required hospital treatment, though the blonde guy kept complaining loudly about his wrist until the paramedic confirmed it was only sprained. Giuseppe gave his own statement to another officer, his indignation clear as he described how the men disrupted his peaceful restaurant and threatened his customer. These men have no respect. They come here, drink too much, bother families with children, then attack a lady who served our country. Other witnesses who saw the confrontation eagerly provided statements supporting Sarah. The elderly Vietnam veteran told Detective Rodriguez, that young woman showed incredible discipline. In my day, we'd have called what she did textbook self-defense. As news spread through social media, the restaurant started getting calls from local news stations wanting to interview Sarah. She politely declined all media requests, preferring privacy. Giuseppe, however, was happy talking with reporters about his hero customer. The 5 men were arrested and charged with assault, disturbing the peace, and public intoxication. As they were led away in handcuffs, the blonde guy made one final attempt at bravado. This isn't over, he called back to Sarah. Detective Rodriguez overheard and immediately stepped forward. Actually, sir, it is over. You attacked a decorated Navy veteran who was minding her own business. You're facing serious charges, and making threats won't help your case. Sarah watched the police cars drive away with her attackers, feeling mixed satisfaction and sadness. She'd hoped her first night out as a civilian would be peaceful and normal, a chance to decompress from military stress. Instead, she'd been forced back into combat mode, using skills she'd hoped to leave behind. Giuseppe approached her table once more, carrying a framed photo of himself as a young man in Italian military uniform. Miss Sarah, I want you to have this. My grandfather gave it to me when I served in Italy. He always said, the strongest people aren't those who show strength in front of us, but those who win battles we know nothing about. Sarah was deeply moved. She accepted the photo gratefully, understanding the significance of Giuseppe's family heirloom. Thank you, sir. This means more than you know. Other customers had gradually returned to their meals, but the atmosphere had changed. There was a sense of community and mutual respect that hadn't existed before. Several diners sent complimentary drinks to Sarah's table, and a local businessman quietly paid her entire bill without her knowledge. Mike brought Sarah a fresh plate of pasta to replace the one that had grown cold during the fight. Chef made this special for you, he said with a grin. He says any Navy hero deserves the best we can offer. As Sarah ate her second dinner of the evening, she reflected on how quickly life could change. 15 minutes ago, she'd been an anonymous woman trying to blend into civilian society. Now she was a local hero, her military identity exposed, but her community support stronger than ever. The story of Sarah Martinez and her 15-second restaurant confrontation spread far beyond the local community. By next morning, videos of the incident had been viewed millions of times across social media. News outlets nationwide picked up the story, praising both Sarah's military service and her measured response to the attack. Giuseppe found his restaurant booked solid for weeks as people came hoping to meet the Navy hero and show support. He created a special table setting where Sarah had been sitting, with a small plaque reading "Reserved for Heroes," and a photo of her in military uniform that she'd reluctantly agreed to provide. The 5 attackers faced serious legal consequences. The blonde guy, whose name was revealed as Kevin Thompson, lost his job at a prestigious law firm when the video went viral. The others faced similar professional and social repercussions as their behavior became public knowledge. Sarah received hundreds of support messages from fellow veterans, active military personnel, and civilians inspired by her story. Many veterans reached out sharing their own experiences with difficult transitions to civilian life, creating an unexpected support network for Sarah during her own adjustment. Detective Rodriguez called Sarah a week later with an update. All 5 men agreed to plea deals rather than face trial. They'll serve jail time, pay substantial fines, and complete anger management and alcohol counseling programs. The video evidence made their guilt undeniable. Sarah felt closure knowing justice was served, but she was more interested in moving forward than dwelling on the incident. She'd learned something important about herself that night. She could defend herself when necessary, but she preferred living in peace. Giuseppe insisted on hosting a small ceremony at the restaurant to honor Sarah's service. Local veteran organizations, city officials, and community members gathered to recognize her military achievements and calm handling of the restaurant incident. Sarah was uncomfortable with attention, but grateful for support. During the ceremony, the mayor presented Sarah with a key to the city and proclaimed the day, Sarah Martinez Day, in recognition of her military service and example of grace under pressure. Giuseppe announced that 10% of the restaurant's profits for the entire month would be donated to veteran support organizations in Sarah's honor. Sarah used her brief fame to advocate for better support systems for returning veterans. She spoke at several events about challenges of transitioning from military to civilian life, emphasizing the importance of community support and understanding. 3 months later, Sarah had successfully transitioned to civilian employment as a security consultant for a major corporation. Her military experience and leadership skills demonstrated during the restaurant incident made her highly sought after in her new field. The restaurant remained popular, and Giuseppe kept Sarah's table reserved every Thursday evening. She came by occasionally, enjoying the quiet community of regular customers who'd adopted her as part of their extended family. Sarah's story became a case study in military training programs, demonstrating the importance of discipline and restraint even in high-stress situations. Her 15 seconds of controlled action had not only protected her from harm, but showcased the professionalism and competence of military personnel. The 5 men completed their sentences and counseling programs, and most seemed to have learned from the experience. Kevin Thompson, the blonde attacker, even wrote a public apology letter, published in the local newspaper, acknowledging his behavior and expressing gratitude that Sarah had shown restraint in defending herself. Years later, when asked about that night at the restaurant, Sarah would smile and say it taught her an important lesson about community. She'd gone to dinner hoping to be anonymous but discovered that hiding her identity wasn't necessary. The people around her respected her service and welcomed her home, not as a stranger trying to blend in, but as a hero who belonged. The incident became a reminder that strength isn't just about the ability to fight when necessary, but about the wisdom to know when fighting is truly required, and the discipline to use only the force needed to resolve the situation. Sarah Martinez had demonstrated both qualities in 15 unforgettable seconds that changed her life and inspired a community. Giuseppe still tells the story to new customers, always ending with the same words. She could have hurt them badly, but she chose to be better than they were. That is true strength.